Hey, Gretzky, you know what this is?
A hair from your wife's tit?
Try it from your thick skull. Forensics took it off a pair of contract killers we found dead this morning.
Fishing for a confession with a phony hair, huh? That's the old one, boys. Come on, Green. You know when I'll know you got my hair off a dead body, right? When I hear the jailhouse doors close behind me, girls.
Okay, then you tell me what they told you. You think that these thugs were hired to kill Evelyn? Is that it?
I have no idea what you're talking about, Green.
Wait, Green, how do you go from petty thug to contract killer? And if they were professional shooters, like you say, they'd have never told us who they was working with anyway. Even if they got one hell of a ass whooping.
You think you're pretty cute, don't you? He does. Yeah, everybody's a smart guy until I bust him in the mouth.
Wait, hey!
Bust me in my mouth?
Hold on. This ain't what I'm here for. Hey, stop!
Welcome to part 2 of our Four Brothers episode. But before we go into real talk, it's time for PP. That's our patron pitch. This is where we let our patrons know what they can expect on their exclusive patron feed, and we also let non-patrons know what they're missing out on. So Alex, this is it. October's always a special month because this is our anniversary month, but it's also the end of the patron takeover. So there's a lot of special stuff going on our Patreon, stuff that's not the usual business. For example, there is no bonus episode per se this month because the bonus episode is going to be the Patronies, which is the award ceremony that we do for all the movies that we cover on our Patreon channel. So if you've been a patron for a while, you know how that goes. If not, well, you're about to find out when we post them at the end of the month. But it's basically a similar ceremony to what we do with the Embries on the main feed, except that it's a little the awards are a little different. It's a lot of fun. So that is available to every single person that's a patron. That's available to all levels. That's on the ground floor. If you are a $1 patron on the Travoltis, you get access to the Patronies, and you get access to all the bonus episodes that we posted since we started the Patreon. So there's that. There's also the cutting room floor stuff, all the clips that don't make it to the main episodes that might be interesting. That's also available to all patrons, $1 and up. Now, if you want to contribute more and get more, then you kick it up to the Winonis tier, or even further up. That gives you access to our pre-recording notes, gives you access to our quick video reviews. We have a new dual quick video review on the queue, Alex. And that is from patron Jordan Mans, who wants us to talk about the original Planet of the Apes, which is a movie that's on his top 100 movies of all time.
There you go.
I haven't seen it in forever. And I think that when I asked you, you said that you're not sure if you've seen it.
I know like all the famous scenes and shit. It's just like I can't for the life of me remember a time where I sat down and watched it start to finish. But I probably would have watched it in college at some point. But for all intents and purposes, it'll be a first time screening of sorts.
There you go. All I can tell you, patrons, is that there will definitely be at some point a reference to the Dr. Seuss song from The Simpsons.
Thank you. Well done.
It's one of the few Simpsons references that I always bring up. So that's QVRs for this month. And then, of course, we have Contrarians After Hours. That's the spin-off show where we tell you about other things that we're watching, that we're reading, that we're listening to, that we're playing, that we're thinking about. Alex, what are you bringing to Contrarians After Hours this time?
Just some more recent movie watchings. We have discussed this before in reference, but I recently rewatched The Descendants that I would like to do a bit of a deeper discussion on.
Okay.
My thoughts on that. Down. And then also recently rewatched My Week with Marilyn, and it's okay. So just
your fascination with that movie, because you bring it up from time to time, and I'm like, really? That one with your boy Oscar winner?
Oh, dude, that's part of it. That's why I'm looking forward to dragging specific parts of that movie through the mud. But yeah, just a review of some 2011 standouts in certain aspects of The Descendants and My Week with Marilyn, and just my thoughts on those. Julio, what about yourself?
Alex, I was bracing myself for you to start with the horror stuff. But I guess I'm ahead of you this time.
Well, I'll do like I did last year. After the month's over, we'll do a recap of everything I watched.
Okay, well, I'm not playing by those rules. This is part of something else. I'm gonna be guesting on the Binge Movies podcast, and part of my homework is watching the original Hellraiser and then the 2022 Hellraiser, and maybe I'll be able to fit in some other Hellraisers in between. I don't know that I need to, but now there's like part of me that was like, well, I watched the first one, I watched the most recent one. I kind of have to fill in the gaps. I don't know. I can promise you that this After Hours we'll be talking about the first Hellraiser and the newest one, which I know you've seen both of them because
one of them's good and one of them's not.
you told me about it when it happened, and then I saw your Letterboxd reviews as a reminder when I logged mine. So it should be an interesting conversation because it's that's a huge blind spot when it comes to big horror franchises, and now I've filled out a little bit of it. So that will be me, Hellraiser and Hellraiser 2022. Alex will be a little more highbrow with The Descendants and my week, right? It's like a full week of shooting.
My week with Marilyn, yeah.
Yeah, my week with Marilyn. That's your After Hours. And then, of course, there's all the other stuff that we talked about, all the special projects. I've been pitching the collections on the Patreon website. Now you have collections for the Roxina event. You have collections for Lohan. You have collections for the Summer Break trilogy. It's cool stuff that we're doing over there. So go to patreon.com/Contrarian Prime, look at our tiers, and see if you would like to join the Contrarian supplements.
$1, $3, $5, and $10 are our respective tiers. Julio mentioned all the goods that you will find over there, the series that we've done. So far, as I've been kind of cryptic about, there's some more to come, so stay tuned. And to all of our current patrons, we love you all dearly. And if you've been thinking about making the jump, you're definitely going to want to, because there's, in addition to all the greatness that's already there waiting for you, there's some interesting arcs and projects coming your way. So
you should make the jump, like our newest patron, Alex.
Oh.
One Eddie Strait, somebody that
Edwin.
has a long history with the Contrarians, and he finally decided, you know what, let's go see what this patron business is all about. Welcome, Eddie. I feel like we bring him up once every few episodes, either because of something that we agree on with him or something that we disagree on. But Eddie Strait is a big part of just our lives, pre-Contrarians and post-Contrarians. So a lot of fun to have him join, and I can't wait to see what he makes us watch. Look forward to that. So be like Eddie. Join the Contrarian supplements.
Exactly. If a man of dignity and taste like Edwin Strait can make the jump, then you have no excuse. Jesting aside, like I said, we love our patrons and look forward to any and all new ones that come our way. So now's the time.
And now it's also the time, Alex, to go avenge this lady that got shot.
Let's do it.
Hey, Gretzky, you know what this is?
A hair from your wife's tit?
Julio, 52% on Rotten Tomatoes, 80% with the audience score of a much, much larger sample. It ain't perfect, but it's what we got. It's Four Brothers.
That's the tagline for Mark Wahlberg's filmography.
God, he is perfect in this. Like that.
Is
when
he
they're at
perfect, Alex? I fear a retread of our pain and gain discussion.
Well, hold on. He, like, his aura and, like, the wardrobing for him is perfect. Like, that white trash shit, that Midwest white trash. Like, when he's in that bowling alley and he's got, like, that beige faux leather jacket over, like, the football jersey that he's wearing with a hoodie underneath. I was just like, God, that is perfect. He's got that greasy hair and the shitty 5 o'clock shadow. I mean, he's Mark Wahlberg, so you know what you get. And this spoiler right out the bat: this ain't pain and gain, and he ain't Daniel Lugo in this. But goddamn, what a fun movie! And I kind of just want to get right to it. So let's start with the positive quotes that you were able to pull. This is a rotten movie, but you know it's right down the middle. It's batting 500 pretty much. So what were the positive quotes that you pulled for this?
The way that Rotten Tomatoes establishes hierarchy. Batting 500 is not good enough to get a fresh tomato, apparently. But let's start with Eleanor Ringel Cater from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, who says, rough and tumble and sometimes raucously funny, Four Brothers can't decide if it wants to be a bloody revenge movie or a heartwarming family piece. So it settles on being a bit of both, and the heck with smooth transitions.
What's the problem?
Yeah,
I ask you.
I think Eleanor is asking the same question. Do you have a problem with that? Take it up with Singleton. Next, Chris Hewitt from St. Paul Pioneer Press says, Director John Singleton is a bit like an agile DJ who creates something exciting and illuminating out of pieces of old songs you already know. I really like that description.
Yeah,
of,
that's
of filmmaker. Especially a filmmaker that's working with this kind of material. It goes back to, because Rest Corner, we always play it up and we're very tongue-in-cheek with most of the things we say, but the idea of not automatically shutting something down because it's a trope. I mean, that is something. This quote plays into that, right? It's like you can take tropes and make them exciting and justify why we celebrate those tropes or remind us of why we turn them into tropes to begin with. So good on you, Chris Hewitt. Next, Peter Cavanese from Groucho Reviews says, call Four Brothers a guilty pleasure. Singleton may go for easy laughs, but he gets them. The gut-level jolts may be ridiculous, but he delivers them with style. Guilty pleasure, Alex?
No, I'd be fine defending this.
Pleasure.
Now, yes. And again, it's going to come up because you and I were so glowing about Pain and Gain. I'm not going to yell it from the mountaintops like I would Pain and Gain, but like this movie, man, this is a damn good time.
Well, one more that may agree with you. Ty Burr from the Boston Globe. Brothers is a full, low-budget revenge thriller, pure and simple. There's nothing special about it, and that's what's refreshing. Is there nothing special about it? Is it that... Because that makes it sound almost unremarkable.
So, is there a date on that review?
So this is August 12th, 2005. So I guess opening weekend.
Yeah, contemporary. All right, so that's fair then, and it is fair now also, but with the near 20 years this movie has aged, seeing Chiwetel Ejiofor as like the really verbose, loud, loquacious bad guy is awesome. And Sofia Vergara in this, who wasn't as big of a name as she is now, she's like a fucking bona fide A-lister now. And Mark Wahlberg's only become a bigger star since then for good and bad reasons. And just the cast in general. Taraji P. Henson is a good example of someone whose star has just exploded since this movie. Mm-hmm. So that aspect of it, you can think of like, man, what an example of stars aligning at a period of time where all these things came together and they were able to pull this all off for $30 million. Again, Tyrese is a much bigger, well-known actor now at this point in terms of like massive franchises. He was just dabbling. So yeah, the weekend this comes out, just like a fuck yeah movie with balls or whatever, man expression you want to use. It's a good time, but watching it 20 years later, for the reasons I said, there is something kind of extremely unique about this movie. And, with Chiwetel Ejiofor, you can look over his filmography and he made some more kind of, I mentioned Salt, and he's made some other... He's in Doctor Strange, so popcorn movies, if you want to call them that. But he ain't really got him like this again. He's clearly going for it and having a good time here. And so, yeah, I stand by that. That review in real time, I understand it. But there's something very charming and unique about this movie and the way it's aged. It's also shot really well in a way that we don't see anymore.
Yeah, well... Yes, I mean, I think it's shot well. I don't know that it's hard to compare. I guess let's get the John Singleton aspect out of the way first, just because I don't have much to say about it, just because I am so unfamiliar with him as a filmmaker, and I feel like anything I say about John Singleton is really going to amount to like, I guess I need to watch more of his stuff to just, I don't know if this is John Singleton just having fun, like Tarantino doing Death Proof. It's like, it's like Tarantino but it's not really. It's a Tarantino movie, but it's not really a Tarantino movie. It's like, what is Four Brothers? Is it, there were a lot of quotes that referenced Selling Out, and I was like, oh, that's John Singleton Selling Out. And like I said in Contreras Corner, I've seen one other movie of his, and it felt a little more like it was a movie that was more concerned with social commentary and just.
Dude, you need to see Boys in the Hood.
Which is, would you say that's closer to Four Brothers or closer to what I was describing?
Yeah, it is not closer to Four Brothers.
Okay, because see, that's my feeling about John Singleton, but not, I can't support it because I know he did Shaft, and Shaft seems like one of those prime examples of Hollywood merchandising, right? Like they took something that was kind of like a cult and they put Samuel L. Jackson on it and got a hot upcoming director to direct it. And I never watched it, so I couldn't tell you like what it's like, but it also felt, I remember hearing about it. I was like, oh, I thought John Singleton was more of an auteur, and now he's making like Hollywood movies. And that's not like good or bad. It's just, not what I thought he was going to do. And then, he does something like Four Brothers, which is, it feels to me like very much like a Hollywood movie. So I understand why some critics would say, oh, he was selling out. But I can't have an opinion on it one way or another because I'm not familiar with most of his filmography. So I'm sorry, John Singleton fans, if you were hoping that there would be a lot of like Singleton discussion, but at least on my end, I am not familiar enough with his work to really analyze how Four Brothers fits in that filmography. I can say that I agree. It's shot well, but I don't think, if I didn't know John Singleton's name from it being part of, pop culture and film history and so on, recent film history, I don't know that I would walk away from this movie thinking, oh, this is a director that I need to follow. Do you disagree? I mean, do you have a bigger, does the filmmaking make a bigger impression on you? Like, aside from the cast, right? Like, I know, and I agree with you that the cast definitely, as the years have gone by, become an even bigger factor in how this movie plays. But as far as like the person that made this movie, does it strike you as like, oh, this is a filmmaker I need to follow? Or did it strike you as like somebody that came to bat, they said, make this movie, and he made it. And it was like, he made it really well, but that's kind of it.
Yeah, I mean, he only did one other movie after this, and it was the aforementioned Abduction, starring Taylor Lautner, Lily Collins, Alfred Molina, Sigourney Weaver. And also, I should revise what I said, because a lot of movies are still shot well. It just has that wholly unique action movie from the mid to late 90s and the early 2000s, like those angled shots and the way characters enter frame and shit. It just looks really good and puts you in a time period.
How do you feel about every time that they see that vision of their mother?
More tattoos, Angel? You don't have to hide them. Look at mine.
Because that's the part where I was like, I don't know if this works. And I'm like, I guess maybe it works in the aesthetic of, it referencing kind of like a way to make movies that we don't really follow that much anymore. Like if you see it in a contemporary movie, like a movie made today, that feels like a little too much. Each of them get this close up, and then you cut to their mom, like a vision of their mom talking to them, and like that feels like it belongs to a different decade of filmmaking. At least that's how it felt to me.
Yeah, it's one of those things of like, those specific moments in the movie are clearly made for like mass audiences that aren't you and I, and especially me, of like, the things I love about this movie. I don't even know how you feel about this movie yet, but to me, it kind of like makes it overly cheesy. And especially in a movie where it's just like constantly dudes getting gunned down in cold blood, it's kind of like, okay. I mean, I understand you're trying to make this a bit more accessible to different people in the audience, and that's a fair play. But for me personally, I kind of, so like, here's what I would do. The Thanksgiving scene is, we recently talked about Bones and All and the complete nuclear destruction of subtlety in modern cinema. And this is an example of something that could benefit from subtlety. So they're at the Thanksgiving dinner, and it's kind of quiet, and we get kind of slow shots of each of them looking over to her chair. Mm-hmm. And kind of, clearly like reflective and pensive. But instead, each of them have their own like personal moment of interaction, which could be kind of cute or like okay, no, you could even do this. You do like they all have their moments where they look at the chair and then there's flashbacks to when they were kids and like memories they have with their mom. But having her there as like a ghost is just, that's like fucking Christmas Carol shit. You know, I don't need that in my bloodthirsty movie in which Chiwetel Ejiofor is wearing a mink coat and yelling at people.
It really feels out of place. It's disconnected from a movie where Garrett Hedlund gets such a horrendous death. Yeah,
and that is like the way I keep saying Cell because I'm so fucking wrestling brained. I can't. I did the Grin last night and we talked for 3 hours afterwards, so like that's all that's in my brain. But it's so much more intense than you see in movies like this, like the terror and like in his face and how he's like so scared. Usually guys like go out defiantly dying in movies like this of fuck, you know, and in this he's like screaming for help from his older brother, and you know the look of like he's like crying when they find him, and the look of acceptance when he dies. It's really extreme for the scenario, for the tone of the movie.
Yeah, I think it's a good way to come into what might be my big gripe or my biggest talking point when it comes to the movie is that I remember this from the first time I watched it too. Like I have a hard time wrapping my head around what kind of movie it is, and I feel like you have an easier time with it, even though you agree with me that some of these things kind of like stand out as not belonging in the same movie. Because when I think of a movie that is about four brothers, for adopted brothers whose adopted mother gets gunned down, and then they go on revenge. They go on a revenge path, right? Because they don't trust the police, so they have to take justice into their own hands, all that stuff. The movie that comes to mind is a lot darker than this movie. Yeah. And sometimes this movie hits that level of darkness that I think is kind of like baked in the idea. And Garrett Hedlund's death is one of those moments. The way that Chewie plays the villain, like I think that can play into that. Like the violence, that kind of stuff plays into it. The constant banter between the brothers, I'm not sure that it fits very well. Especially, but I mean, and I've said it before the show, I know that grief is one of those wonderful things in movies that you can play 100 different ways because people grieve differently. Grief hits you differently, and you may act so wildly out of character when you're grieving. And so you can justify it up to a point. You can say, like, this is how they grieve. They grieve by teasing each other. But it still feels like a little out of place in a movie that has such a dark setup. And then you compound that with the visions of the mom. And that's how the movie ends. Like the final shot of the movie, the last movement of the story is Mark Wahlberg talking to the vision of his mom. And that Thanksgiving scene that you were referencing, Mark Wahlberg is the only one that doesn't get one of those, right? Like first you see Garrett Hedlund, then I think Andrew Benjamin, and then Tyrese. They each get a vision with the mom, but then Wahlberg doesn't get one. And so he gets up and he's like, let's go play hockey. So they save his to the end. And then at the end, she's like, are you going to stay? And he said, yeah, I'm going to stay.
I think so. What is it? I've been thinking about it, Ma.
Yeah. I get it. I get why it's there. I get the purpose and how it's structured and all that stuff. But I just don't. It's not the movie I wanted. I guess that's ultimately the big thing. Like the way this movie starts, it promised me. It made me think that I was going to get a movie that was a lot more hard hitting. I don't have a problem with the morality of it, which kind of surprised me. I'm okay with because this movie has no bones about the fact that it thinks that these people are terrible and they need to be stopped. And if the police is not going to do anything, well, then we are going to put a stop to them. And I saw a lot of critics quotes that had issues with that, and we can talk about it. But that's not a problem. I think that as long as the movie has a consistent point of view, and I think it does, as far as like what is correct and what is not correct, what is right, what's the right thing to do here, then that I'm fine with that. But tonally, I think that at times it has a little too much fun. And it's not to say that I don't find it fun when they're quipping. I really like their chemistry. I think that honestly, there's another version of this movie that I probably would have enjoyed even better. And that is just a movie where these four actors come to town to grieve the loss of their mother. And there's no plot about them chasing their murderers or anything. It's just Tyrese, Mark Wahlberg.
Where's the fun there?
Just them hanging out. I had a lot of fun seeing them hanging out.
Okay, well,
I know that's not Four Brothers.
Yeah, I was about to say, you're also saying that that's a movie with a radically different cast also.
Well, no, but I think that this cast pulls it off. Do you think that you could not buy them in a movie that's not an action movie? Just the rapport they have?
I'm not saying that. I obviously buy their chemistry and I buy their they do really good together. All four of them are excellent. But I'm just thinking like timetable. You can't make fucking Before Sunrise with these guys. Like it can't just be like all serious and dialogue based. Specifically,
oh my god! Okay, Alex, forget about the financial side of it. Like, don't be a studio head. Just be a movie lover. Wouldn't you love to see that type of movie? Richard Linklater just gets these four guys together, and it's like Four Brothers 20 years later.
It's Tyrese, Wahlberg, Garrett Hedlund, and fucking Andre 3000. And it's 15-minute takes of just improvised dialogue, you know? Oh, man. It'd be a hell of a time. And then Sofia Vergara is just in the background. Yes! Like, that's just like her contribution to the scene. I understand what you're saying. I just enjoy this movie so much that it kind of, my immediate defense is like, well, I don't want to change what I like. Mm. And we were just talking about the stuff, the flashbacks, not flashbacks, but like the ghost of the mom haunting them. And, there are some things that change. That entire like side quest where they go to the basketball game obviously leads to something, but it feels also very out of place because they go into a public event and Mark Wahlberg pulls a gun on them.
Yep.
And like those people aren't bad people. They're not the bad guys or gals that we're hunting. Like I said, it leads to his break. He gets a name and whatnot, but that whole thing seems very... Well, it was. That was the scene that was shot for trailers. You know what I mean? Of like, because it was definitely still in the era of that mattering of movies. Of we got to have the big shot, and so Mark Wahlberg going into a gym and stealing the basketball and holding the entire stadium hostage. That that's the teaser, and so
dribbling for a few seconds before pulling the gun out.
Oh yeah, he does because he's talking mad shit. He's like, "I got the rock now," or whatever he says. It's
that scene pushes the limits, I think, of what I was willing to buy as far as the reality of this movie. And I mean, it eventually you're like, whatever, this is happening in some sort of town where the police presence is non-existent unless you need them to come back to a crime scene after everything has settled. But
yeah,
like when Tyrese and Sofia Vergara are running from her ex-boyfriend or current boyfriend, that he's just shooting at them and there is just no repercussions about that. I mean, I get it, that's like, it's that type of movie, but it was still, it was kind of like jolting because again, you open with something that I guess feels so real. This poor woman getting gunned down in what seems to be a robbery at first, that when you get into the sillier aspects of the movie, they kind of take you out of it.
Terrence Howard here is what we know to be Terrence Howard. And watching it in 2023 almost feels like he's just trying to be as Terrence Howard as he possibly can. Maybe he was like just way ahead of the curve. He's like, this is what I'm going to do. People are going to love it. And, people are going to parody it, but they're never going to forget me. But I did not remember that he dies halfway through the movie or about halfway. And to me, his death in this is more shocking than one of the brothers dying because there's four of them. It's bound to happen. But Terrence Howard just getting gunned down and also just like so easily is pretty shocking.
So dumb though. He basically
it's very
turns his
dumb.
back on
on a cop, so he knows he's armed and he knows he's crooked, but he's just like assuming that he's not going to shoot him. Yeah. And then, of course, how'd that work out for you, brother? It's still not as dumb as Mark Wahlberg being airdropped onto Lake St. Clair But airdropped far enough away that he gets 10 to 15 minutes of walking in.
He had to warm up for the big fight.
Like how I really like this movie and will be rewatching it come Thanksgiving here in 2 months, but how dumb of a shot is that? There is nothing around them. It's established it took them like an hour to get driven out there. And then it just cuts to this big wide shot of him walking up. That's tantamount. They present it as though it's tantamount to you waiting for me in the lobby of the draft house and you see me walking in from the parking lot.
It is really dumb, but it's also, if you're with the movie, and I kind of was, in this particular scene, it's pretty awesome. It's a great entrance, right? And it's a great answer to the question, who is going to kill Chewie? Who has the balls to do it? There's the answer. That shot. But see, that's a positive, right? I had my nitpicking throughout the story with the plot, and I had my issues with the tone. But when it gets to the end, I am all in. I want them to win. I am happy when Andrew Benjamin reveals that he's not an idiot. Well, the build up to that meeting, I'm like, is he really that dumb? Is the movie telling you that the family man is just so blinded by what he thinks is right that he doesn't realize that he is just offering himself up to the bad guys? And then it turns out that no, he had a plan, and he had in the world of this movie, he had a half decent plan, which is, I'm not going to buy you, I'm going to buy your workers, which we know because we've been shown that you've been mistreating through the entire movie. So I thought that was smart. So I fist pumped in, and then Marky Mark showed up, and I'm like, yeah, do it. That was the moment that I think I cheered the most for, for him, which takes me to the kind of the original, the crux of this enterprise, which is the Mark Wahlberg effect, the Mark Wahlberg element.
I was so entranced with everyone else in this movie but him that I didn't even think of where he would have been at this point in time. He's fucking Mark Wahlberg. That's the whole. We've talked about him a lot on here, and that's aside from Boogie Nights and
The Departed,
Pain and Gain, and The Departed. He's just Mark Wahlberg and everything else. You know what I mean?
I listened to our Pain and Gain episode in preparation for this conversation because I finished Four Brothers and I was like, I don't think I have anything else to say about Mark Wahlberg that I probably haven't said when we did Three Kings and when we did Pain and Gain.
That's fair.
I don't think he can carry a movie. He can lead a movie. He can open a movie. He is, what those quotes were saying about this movie, about Four Brothers. I think that reflects how I feel about Mark Wahlberg, which is unremarkable, but that's okay. That's coming from somebody who's obviously not into what he does. I think that if you're into his big action persona, then obviously he's more than that.
Being said, though, and to recap or constitute some of our previous views, he's awesome in The Departed and he's awesome in Pain and Gain.
He is amazing in The Departed. The Departed is so good at just taking Mark Wahlberg, and I don't know. It's like they found the right key to just, and maybe I don't know if he would have sustained that for an entire movie, but the fact that he just comes in from time to time, absolutely kills it with the attitude, the look, the posture, the way he delivers the lines. Everything is great about that character. And then he gets the final moment in the movie on top of everything. That's great. I don't know. I mean, that is the perfect storm, Alex, not the George Clooney movie. It's what Scorsese did in The Departed with Mark Wahlberg was the perfect storm. I can't explain it, but I know that in every other movie, including because I was less enthused about his performance in Pain and Gain. I think that it's good. It's it does what it needs to be done, and it does something that it's not like every actor could have done that. It's you have the physical aspect of it, and then you have just kind of the willingness to lean into something that is part of your public persona, I guess, if you're Mark Wahlberg. So that's good too. I mean, but my feeling when I see most Mark Wahlberg movies is always, man, wouldn't this be better if there was some more interesting actor doing it? And that's how I feel about Four Brothers.
Do you have someone on the top of your head?
Anybody. I mean, I'm not gonna go to Fassbender because that's obviously my answer for everything. But
That's our
anybody,
go-to.
Kevin Smith always talks about how he believes that Ben Affleck can play anything. So just in the spirit of that, like put Ben Affleck as the older brother here, and instantly a more interesting movie. Most actors, I think, just because I find that they have. I guess more charisma than Mark Wahlberg. I just don't find him charismatic. And
What about Matt Dillon?
Sure, why not? I mean, that's a harder sell. but at least I'll be like, I haven't seen Matt Dillon play this character before. I have seen Mark Wahlberg play this character before, like in trailers. Even there's not a whole lot to it. He's just like, oh, he's the badass, right? Like out of the four of them, he's the tough one. Man, if you had a younger Mark Wahlberg playing the Garrett Hedlund character, now you got my attention. I'm like, all right, he's playing against type. But this idea of Mark Wahlberg, I mean, that's the Mark Wahlberg I've been seeing in movies for decades now, and there's nothing about it that I find compelling, that tickles my imagination. It doesn't mean that he doesn't do the job. I mean, I buy everything he does in this movie, and I believe that he's a badass. I believe that he doesn't take shit from anybody, and I find him very capable of taking care of business. But man, I mean, it's an ensemble piece, but in the end, he is the lead, and I find him the least interesting. He's the one brother that's really bland. Like all the other ones, like Tyrese has obviously some serious issues with his sex life. Andrew Benjamin is the older one, the one that's trying to keep things together as an adult, and then the other one, Garrett Hedlund, is the young one. And so all three of them are a lot more colorful and just a lot more fun to watch than Wahlberg, who's just there to like be tough. So that's
I think that's absolutely accurate, and I also think that makes the movie does a good job of actually giving the other three shit to do. At no point to me does it feel like Mark Wahlberg dominates this movie, because at least Andre Benjamin and Tyrese and even Garrett Hedlund to a point have other shit going on. I mean, Garrett Hedlund's kind of like the puppy he's the run to the litter that kind of follows them around everywhere. But we have females in the life of Andre and Tyrese. So like an easy way for this movie to suck and lose me is if we're only following Mark Wahlberg, but he has these three other brothers.
Yeah.
Because you're right, he's just G.I. Joe out there, I'm here. I'm gonna kill someone. I'm gonna avenge my mother, and it's so I appreciate that the role of Bobby, is Bobby his name?
I think so.
The role of Bobby is the most limited of the brothers. Angel, Jeremiah, and Jack actually have like some shit to their character.
It's not just a boo-boo. Somebody put their fist in your eye. Let me see it.
Come on now.
Are you okay? Oh my God, you're bleeding, baby.
You know I could take a punch.
But I guess I am going to take a stand in the sense of it doesn't become the Mark Wahlberg show at any point. And I think there's some fine line walking here of he's clearly the star, top build. It's a Mark Wahlberg movie. We're going to go see the new Mark Wahlberg movie. But he does not dominate the story at any point. And I kind of like that. It feels like fairly balanced amongst the others, even though the premise of this is about as tight as a clump of cotton candy. And so I'm not going to act like this movie is like perfect storytelling, but the W's I will take are that. And Andre Benjamin, okay, here we go. Let's talk about Andre 3000. He's okay in this. I really like his scene where he's like, I paid her bills. You guys were never fucking around, like that thing. Mm-hmm. But other portions of this, he seems very wet behind the ears.
Really?
And
let's have another disagreement, Alex, because I think he's the best out of the four.
Oh, okay. Because my thing was going to be, because we were both extremely complimentary of him in semi-pro. Mm-hmm. I kind of felt like this was his running start, and then he kind of got some polish on him over the next couple years, and then gave us the role of Coffee Black, Sugar Dunkerton. I'm trying to remember all the names that he had there, but okay. Garrett Hedlund is greener than goose shit, and Tyrese is Tyrese. When death sentence was 4 years after this?
I thought it was 2 years after.
Was it 07?
I thought so.
You might be right. But while I look that up, hit me with chat me up your thoughts on Andre 2000.
Benjamin? Well, I think that maybe he just benefits from
You were
being...
right, by the way. It was 07. Good call.
Man, he really grew up in those 2 years.
Yeah, adapt or die.
I think that maybe he benefits from being the brother that's not posturing, at least in my eyes. So it's a lot easier to relate to him, at least for me. He's the guy that's saying, hey, I know this is an action movie, but maybe it doesn't need to be. So he's constantly trying to talk sense to these guys who are just very hot-headed and really ready to just grab the guns and go asking for answers in all the wrong places. He's just like, hey, I'm going to go back to my family. Hey, mom would have forgiven these people that killed her because she knows what the environment is like. And so already from the start, he's a more unique character with a very specific point of view. The way that he talks, I think, is he doesn't come across as a character. Like Mark Wahlberg comes across as a character. Tyrese comes across as a character. Oh, yeah. But that's fine because I also believe that them, they have to project that. That's how they survive, right? They have to project that they're big men and they're action men. And whereas Andrew Benjamin, he's the guy that settled. He's left that life. So it makes sense that he would sound different. And I think he nails it. I think that maybe where he is at a disadvantage is that because the movie wants us to maybe consider that he may not be what he's supposed to be, that maybe he's a bad guy. There's big chunks of the movie where they just write him off and we don't know where he is. And that sucks, right? Because I'd rather see what else was going on with his character. I would like to see him be part of the investigation the way that the other three brothers are part of the investigation. But whenever he comes in, I buy him. I found that he was the one that felt the most naturalistic out of all the four brothers, and even his reactions in the background. I mean, all four of them are actually really good, I think, at that chemistry we were talking about, right? Where you believe that they're just having fun whenever there's two of them getting into it and the other two are in the background laughing or just watching their brothers fight. That's it's very believable. So no, I bought him. I think that he puts on the best performance out of the four. And then as much as I like some of the things that Garrett Hedlund does in this movie, I think that he also has some of the weakest moments. Is that what you were going for when you said that he was really green? Or do you think that he's overall good, just obviously inexperienced compared to the other three?
And I can't say that he's like in there with Titans because it's Mark Wahlberg, Tyrese, and Andre Benjamin, who two of those guys would have been fairly inexperienced at that point. It's just some of his emoting and reacting to some shit throughout this. The range of return is so wide. I talked about when he gets shot and the way he sells like his death is very engaging from like a realistic perspective of how scared and, realizing he's going to die it is, as opposed to what you typically see in like action, big, loud movies like this. But then some of the other stuff, when he's got his internal thoughts going about, seeing the ghost of his mom and he's trying really hard to cry in some parts that like, hey, brother, shit worked out for him. And he's also, if I can take a moment to one time talk positively about Inside Llewyn Davis and everyone in that movie, I will. But and this is definitely not me saying I could do any better, but it was just one of those things of like, I think this was a tall task for him. But what we learned, though, especially just looking at it in real time here about death sentence wasn't too far behind this. And he seems like a different actor in that movie. So he's clearly someone who has the skills. It's just like, baptism by fire,
Yeah, I was blown away when I saw how close together they were, those two movies. And it made me so happy that we'd done Death Sentence because otherwise I wouldn't have that reference. I think I mentioned Death Sentence. Garrett Hedlund, I always thought Troy. He's Achilles' friend, Brad Pitt's friend in Troy. And then, Llewyn Davis would come later, and more recently Mudbound. I know he's been in other
Tron.
things.
He's the lead in Tron, right?
I haven't seen Tron, but yes, you're right. He
Okay.
is. Yeah, I mean, he has a career. He's a solid actor now, but it's night and day if you see him here and then you see him in That Sentence, and it's not necessarily about the quality of the acting, because, like I said, I think that for the most part he's really good here. It's just that he has those moments where you're like, oh, he's green, right? Mm. And then in That Sentence, you wouldn't think that at all. He comes in with such confidence, and I don't think that he hits a single weak note in that movie.
And to the Llewyn Davis tangent, he has one of the most memorable roles in that movie because everyone in that movie is kind of a dick or is too nice and naive, but everyone has a lot of dialogue. He's in that whole stretch with John Goodman, and John Goodman just won't shut the fuck up the entire time. And Garrett Hedlund's there and has, 4 or 5 lines of dialogue, but like his physical presence and obviously I love that movie more than 10 out of 10 people you'll find on the street. But when I think of that and him and that, I can vividly just picture his character and the stoicness of it. And so he's a guy that he figured it out quick, because even that, you want to make that comparison, that's less than 10 years removed from this. And, there's plenty of actors that didn't evolve or grow that much in 20 years, let alone 10. I mean, we're talking about Mark Wahlberg, for Christ's sake. So,
yeah, he already plateaued.
I know you're not gonna tell me what I want to know, so I'm gonna light your little bitch ass on fire. Then I'm gonna watch you run around here like a chicken with his head cut off, lighting all your little friends on fire. Is that what you want?
So let's. I don't think we're gonna go too deep into this because there's really not a whole lot to go into it, but it is worth calling out, and I mentioned it earlier. Just there's critics that have problems with the moral stance that this movie takes. You can read it as it's a pro-vigilante movie, and I think that probably is taking this movie too seriously. I anticipate that that's going to be your response. You're overthinking Four Brothers, but it is that, right? I'm not misreading the movie. That's when it comes down to it. This movie is just basically telling you, look, it's okay to take justice in your own hands sometimes.
It's Charles Bronson, those Death Wish movies and grindhouse movies of that ilk. That's what this is, but it has an A-list cast, and it was a Paramount picture. They released it, promoted it. It was a summer release, made $100 million almost. Those are movies people pay attention to, and then they're more inclined to be like, well, I don't know about this. I don't know, this isn't the right message, but Death Wish and movies like that, and all the straight to VHS movies of the 90s that were like this. No one gives a shit about that. And that's the thing of this is, people give a shit, but you know what I mean? Critics aren't going to go out their way. All right, here's the point. There are so many movies just like Four Brothers. They took all that he had. He had to fight for himself. It's the story of Max Payne, the video game. And eventually Mark Wahlberg would make a really shitty movie with disgraced actress Mila Kunis about Max Payne. But in this case, it comes from how much notoriety is it getting? How much money is it going to make? Is a major studio releasing it? And that's Tree in the Woods. And so I appreciate the thought of hey man, this is maybe sending a bad message. But I've also just seen so many movies of the exact same that no one ever said boo about. Do I personally think the message is bad? No, because I lump it in with those movies that are dumb time at the movies. If we wanted to play devil's advocate, we definitely could. There is an interesting perspective to this of it's racially mixed. Mm-hmm. In the sense of these cops are beating both, the white guy and the black guy. They're not helping the white guy or the black guy. And so I don't know if that was intentional. It may have been to kind of deflect from.
It's too symmetrical not to be intentional. And I don't want to I want to finish one point before we fuck it, let's do it right now, because I don't think that there's a whole lot that either of us can say about it, but just because it's there. I brought it up in Conspiracy Corner as a positive. I honestly, I don't know if it's a positive or a negative. I know that it's right that, you have two white brothers, two black brothers. The cops, one is black, one is white. The bad guys, the main bad guy is black, but also, Josh Charles doubles up as, he's not just a white cop, he's also a white bad guy. I feel like
it's not also like Chewie's gang isn't all black guys, It's
right. In the end, I just don't know if that makes a movie, going back to just that word, interesting. Is it more interesting to basically make a movie that just flattens the curve when it comes to race? Or is it more interesting to make a movie that digs into what makes the difference between, black people and white people, black communities, white communities? Is it more interesting that if the police is corrupt a certain way with the white community and a certain way with the black community? Or is it just more interesting if you don't concern yourself with that and just make a story about like the police are corrupt? And I know that in the end, it has to do with what do you want your movie to say? And this is, I think, how we tie it into the morality of vigilantes. It's like, if John Singleton is just making a movie that's about, good guys and bad guys and the good guys prevailing no matter what, and if that means that they have to bend or break the rules, then so be it, then there's really no room for, the exploration of racial dynamics and so on. I mean, there could be, but then that would make it more of a highbrow movie. And I think that what he wanted to do was just, have fun with an action movie. And he can still bring diversity to the cast, and that's cool. But in the end, it's just like a very simplified version of this story. It could be told in a much more complex way, but then that's not... I guess where I land is that I can't say that it's a failing of the movie, because the movie wasn't even interested in going there. The movie was just like, no, we're going to tell this story about, good guys, bad guys, revenge. And yes, they're not going to be all white or all black, but that doesn't mean that we're going to necessarily have to say anything about why they're black or why they're white.
Which obviously with the raised tensions of today, it's not that easy. I know this movie's not even 20 years old, but you couldn't make this movie today and not expect some kind of like, you're making this way oversimplifying it. And, I always talk about like wanting easier, dumb movies, but it's just not, it hasn't been 2 decades, but it's no longer a time where movies like this are that easy to make. You know what I mean? Like there's more to it.
I think it's something that works for the movie is that John Singleton directed it. And he already had established himself with other movies that address race more directly. So you can watch this and be like, okay, so this is him just kind of chilling and taking a step back. If you had some unknown white director maybe putting out this movie, then there'll be more criticism. You'll be like, okay, who does this guy think he is? or why doesn't this guy dig deeper? Because he just can't. Now, I think that the reason why I thought about the idea of vigilantes and whether there's a problem with it or not is just because when we did that sentence, I felt that movie dropped the ball. But that's because that movie actually poses the question, right? Like that movie turns Kevin Bacon into a vigilante and has a character that questions that. And it looks like it's trying to start a conversation about it. And then at the end, it just doesn't really want to take any sides. Like this movie doesn't have that problem, and I actually prefer that because this movie at least commits. This movie says, yes, they're vigilantes, and yes, they're doing the right thing. There's no question. Like the movie has this set of beliefs, and I mean, you can disagree with them, but at least the movie's telling you how it feels about it.
I was going to say I never actually answered your question, and our thoughts are pretty much in line because my thought is there's not the moral quandary here that there is in Death Sentence, because it's like even the cop that tells them, don't get too close to the fire. You don't know what you're doing. Leave this to the professionals. Immediately is put into like his own mini movie about the cop that turns on him and stuff. So it's like the whole movie is just ridiculous. And like I said, at no point with the literally like secondary, and I don't mean that as in backup. I mean that as in like measurement of time reaction of Andre Benjamin after he murders that guy with the butcher knife, having like a second of remorse. That's it as far as moral anguish or internal debate goes as far as, the motives of these characters. Because then 2 seconds later, he runs over a guy with his car. And so...
yeah, there's nobody ever has a moment of pause about the fact that they murdered Chewie and threw him down an ice hole, and that's it.
They do, yeah. Andre Benjamin kills that guy and has the "What have I become?" But if you blink, you'll literally miss it. And then by the end of the movie, he's like, "Yeah, throw that motherfucker in the hole, man."
Get him, Jerry.
Try it one more time. What you gonna do? You'll see. Big ass teeth. Bite me?
All right. Well, what is your score, Alex?
So I really enjoy this. I remembered enjoying it. I enjoyed it upon rewatch. None of that was diminished. It wasn't a movie that I watched and it like blew my mind upon rewatch or anything, but it's a lot of fun. Like I said, I will be watching it on, this will probably be, is this how you end Thanksgiving? Maybe Rocky would be the one to play at the end of the night, but it'll be on in the background at some point on Thanksgiving. I'll officially add it to the lineup. Teetering right on a B and a C. I'm going to say B minus because there is some stuff in this I think is excellent. Which would, when I log this on Letterboxd, probably 3.5 stars is where I'll go. So yeah, I'll stick with a B minus for Four Brothers.
3.5 is also where I'm gonna go. That seems right. It's just kind of like right down the middle with all the stuff that I like. And then, I mean, if it's not any higher, it's just because there's a lot of stuff that I just either don't find as amusing or just I don't think it works. But overall, it is a fun movie. I would just tell anybody, oh yeah, watch Four Brothers at least once. It's a good time. So B minus 3.5. I think that is overall a solid recommend from the Contrarians. And Sachin, hopefully, whether you agree or disagree with us, at least hopefully you had a good time hearing us discuss the movie. Yeah. But thank you for being a patron. Thank you for the demand. Absolutely. Thank you so much for your continued support and bringing this to our desk. And it is forever entered into Contrarians canon. So, Julio, that was Four Brothers. What is on deck next? Alex, this is it. The patron takeover comes to an end. The final installment. We're about to wrestle control of our podcast back into our own hands. But not before we address one final demand. This is from Robert Stewart, also known as Stu. Stu, who was with us... Man, how long ago was it? Whenever we did it was in the middle of the Friends Extravaganza. He came for the Romeo Michelle episode. Of Stu World Order? Of Stu World Order. Yes. SWO Productions. Stu said, guys, you're always talking about Zack Snyder. His best movie is obviously his Dawn of the Dead remake. How about you do the original Dawn of the Dead? He didn't say any of that. He just said Dawn of the Dead. All right, that's what's next. Patrons, thank you so much for your continued support. This has been an absolute blast, and honestly, just we'll reflect upon it in the next episode, but this has been a tremendous undertaking. In the meantime, though, let's go ahead and get y'all out of here. We've talked about Four Brothers, I'd argue, probably as long as anyone else on the internet, so bring it home. We're going to move into our perennial plugs, and we'll start off by giving thanks to the Festive Years. They provide our opening and closing tracks. They kick us off with Last Stand, take us home with Summer of 99. Be sure to head over to thefestiveyears.com for any and all Festive Years needs. Our friend and fellow podcaster Hans Rothiser is the man behind our logo. He's the guy that designed that little tomato looking at himself in the mirror. So if you like that, let Hans know. You can reach him on Twitter or X at Mildemonios, MILDEMONIOS, or you can email him, mildemonios@hotmail.com, or you can check out his website, mildemonios.pe, where he lists all his other work. He's a writer, so he has a bunch of fantasy novels that he's written. He's also a podcaster. He has a podcast about Peruvian current affairs called Nación Combi, and a podcast about economy called Marginal. He's a Renaissance man of all trades, as they say. So thank you, Hans, for all your support. LateNightGrin.com, the boys over there. I had our monthly Grin Grappler show last night when we discussed the catalog and career of one Bam Bam Bigelow. Scott Bigelow from Asbury Park, New Jersey. Visually one of the most memorable wrestlers of all time, and cinematically had a bit part in Major Payne, so he was also in the world of film. If you are a fan of pro wrestling, be sure to check out their show. They're
one of the best in the game, and they'll keep you apprised on all the recent goings on and happenings. But latenightgrin.com, Late Night Grin on Twitter. Joe, Matt, Oracle, Rob, the whole gang's there. And our gang, our social media gang, Zoe Perez, Corey Ari. Corey, my God, man, a machine, continues to churn out our videos on our YouTube page, which is youtube.com/@contrarianprime. And also, we've been posting shorts on our Instagram account, @contrarianprime on Instagram. The work Corey's been doing for us has been just superb. Our quick video reviews that have been coming out recently on Martin and Bones and all as well. You can find those on our YouTube account free of charge. If you do go there, subscribe, boost our signal, promote the algorithm, whatever expression I can use, just help some more people see what it is we do here. But Zoe also, the help she's given us from the start, be it on our Facebook page, facebook.com/contrarianprime. They got you covered, and we appreciate the work that they do for us. Most of all, we appreciate you, the listening public, for tuning in to yet another episode of The Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong, and we will catch you next time.